What's up, YouTube? Welcome back to Celio's Network. Today we're looking at some tournament results from online events on play.limitlesstcg.com. We'll be looking at a 250 plus person event, a 400 plus person event, and a 200 person event. All of them are the late night series run by Zach Lesage. So we'll be looking at the late night that was run on the 20th, I believe. 20th, yeah, the 20th EU time, so noon Eastern, and then the late night from that night, and then the late night special from the next day. All of these have a lot of players in them and a lot of good players in them. All Lost Origin standard format, so a lot of stuff to look at. So let's get into it. We'll start out by looking at the metagame for this first one. So this is one with 250 plus players in it. Lost Zone Box being the most popular deck, and then Palkia and Tina and Kyurem and Hisuian Zoroark and Mew all being very close to each other. Like, I'd say these five decks are tied for second most popular, essentially, because there's not that large of a percentage between the five of them. So Palkia and Teleon, Tina, Kyurem, Hisuian Zoroark, and Mew VMAX all being like the tier 1 in popularity, with Lost Zone Box being like the tier S for this event in popularity. And then we have a couple things like Arceus and Teleon, Hisuian Gudra, Dialga, all of these like 5 to 6 to 7 to 8 people playing them range decks in the, like the tier 2 range for popularity, and then everything below that, everything under 2% being tier 3 or under in popularity. So yeah, now that we looked at the metagame for this, Lost Zone Box really popular. We can also see what kind of that there's so much variance, right? Look at all of these cards that people are trying out in Lost Zone boxes. That there's so much variance. But we'll look at the top deck lists and see how those were playing. So let's start with top 16. We have a few Palkia Kyurem decks. Here we have Lucas Oldale's at 30 match points, the highest match points for the top 16 in this event, playing 3-3 Kyurem, 2-2 Palkia, 1 Empoleon. Looking pretty standard as far as I think current Kyurem Palkia decks go. As for the matchups, looks like took a loss to a Tina, took a win to a Tina, took a loss to a Palkia, took actually 2 losses to Palkia and 2 wins versus Palkia, so 2-2 versus Palkia. Doing pretty good against Lost Zone boxes, that Empoleon probably helping out. So I think Kyurem Palkia is a very strong deck. That's a solid list for it. We'll see Liam Kidd playing almost an identical list. Down here, we have another almost identical list, and one more we'll look at. Fourth Kyurem V in it has an Illuminion as well, but also a drastically lower amount of match points compared to the other ones. We do have one Radiant Charizard deck here, playing other attackers though. I guess in case you play against a matchup that's playing Lost City. I think Mew VMAX is like the main deck with Lost City right now. So you have Drapion V for that as well. Galarian Zapdos V to hit some Fighting Week stuff. Raikou V to hit some Lightning Week stuff. I really like this actually. Let me open it up as an image, try to kind of get like the whole vibe of it. Yeah, I kind of really like this list. I think there's definitely something here. It's just, is it too slow against Lost Zone boxes that are trying to turbo out Sableye 10 Lost Zone cards like on turn 2? Probably too slow against those kinds of things, unfortunately. But if Sableye Lost Zone box gets hard countered, which it certainly can, um, other single price decks like this could have a chance to rise back up. Looking like they did do really well against a couple of Lost Zone boxes, and then went on this 6-win streak into 2 IDs, beating Gudra, Arceus Aggron, Kyurem Palkia, Mew, another Mew, Atina. So beating a large spread of different kinds of decks. That's very cool. We have an Arceus and Teleon here, using the new Radiant Gardevoir. I'm not sure how I feel about Radiant Gardevoir in succession with Path to the Peaks, because of course you're turning off your own Radiant Gardevoir, but I guess in matchups where Path to the Peak is good, you aren't using Radiant Gardevoir, and you just kind of accept that. So, I don't know. I think the jury is still out on that and how you should build Arceus and Teleon, or if it's even worth playing. Here we have something that looks like the popular Yokohama Lost Box decks, except they're playing 2 Shuppet, 2 Bennett. Of course, Bennett allows you to put this card into the Lost Zone and then get a supporter back. Haven't seen many people using that card. It's interesting for turboing out the turn 2 Sableye, I think, but it's also just a little bit more bulk in your deck, like things that you don't want to see in the late game, I think. Maybe you do want to see them in the late game. They can get back your Clara, your Boss, your Roxanne, something like that. But I don't know. I feel like the regular version from Yokohama is just better and more streamlined. Then we have some Mew VMAX. We'll be looking at a lot of these same decks throughout the other tournaments as well that we look at here today. So I want to focus on just a couple per tournament. Here we have Palkia Bibarel, like Tord played in Baltimore. I think this is an interesting archetype that should have some more exploration. It's just super consistency Palkia. You could probably toss the second Empoleon in now, now that we're in Lost Origin format. And maybe try some other cool things out. I think this is an underexplored deck for sure. PJ went 10-4-1, losing to a Palkia at the end. And what else do we have to look at here? We've got second place Palkia, playing 4-3 Palkia. You know, I'm really starting to wonder when people are going to start trying Thornton instead of that fourth Palkia. Really surprised that's not becoming like a popular thing yet. Then we have just a straight Kyurem deck. Well, it's not straight Kyurem. It has 1-1 Palkia, so it shows up as straight Kyurem. I like 2-2 Palkia, so we're going to just go by that. Here's another Cramorant box. Now, this is one of the much more techy versions. This has the Crab, Drapion, Zeraora. This one is more akin to the Singapore Lost Zone box as opposed to the one that performed well in Yokohama, which I've covered both of the variants on the channel in my top 8 reports of Singapore and Yokohama, and you can also find those on limitlesstcg.com as well if you want to see the original lists, but I think most people are just copying the same 60 from those. And then we have a Giratina that won this event. I'm still a fan of Thornton and Giratina. I think Thornton is good. Not everybody's playing them, and they're still seeing success without it. So I guess it's hard to say right now that it's necessary, but I really think it's necessary. Like, it sounds so enticing to just be able to not bench a Giratina V, and then turn your Sableye or your Comfy or something into a Giratina, then immediately evolve it, and then attack, and never have to have the V on your bench. I don't know. I think Thornton's good, and people are overlooking Thornton in Giratina decks. But overall, this tournament had a high share of Lost Zone box and Palkia and Teleon and Giratina and Kyurem Palkia. Looking at the win-loss rates, Palkia and Kyurem Palkia dominated. They had 53% win rates. And then we have things like Giratina and Hisuian Zorak and Lost Zone box, all under 50% win rates. And then Lost Zone box being the most popular deck, it had 2 shellings in top 8, which is super fair. And then Palkia being the second most had Palkia and Teleon also had 2, super fair. You know, you have the second most of these decks in the tournament, 2 of them make top 8, that's expected. Kyurem Palkia as well. I'll just count this as Kyurem Palkia because it really is in top 8. A Palkia Bibarel, which that is definitely not one of the more popular decks. And then we also had a Mew, and Mew was up there, 8% of the tournament, with an okay win rate. Let's move on to the next one. This one had over 400 people. And some of my boys from Cutter Tap were in this event as well. Hale and Hunter getting 5th and 3rd with Yokohama Lost Box, and Mew VMAX. We'll get to Hunter's Mew VMAX list. It's a little different than others. This tournament did have a Hisuian Zoroark make top 16, but before we start looking at that, let's see what the metagame was. Lost Zone Box at 16% and Kyurem Palkia at 13%. Now, this is over 400 people playing. These are some really good numbers. This is really good data to look at. So, this deck was the most popular and had over a 50% win rate. A lot of people were transitioning into the Yokohama box list, which is what Cal and Hale played. They played the same 60. This deck has a lower skill floor. It still has a very high skill ceiling, but a lower skill floor. So it makes sense that if it was this popular, that it would have a better win rate than the previous event where people hadn't fully transitioned into the Lost Zone box yet because the information was just coming out with this deck. So a lot of people were net decking this new one for this late night 58 and we're playing that. And I think it's easier to pilot to a reasonable success rate, which is why the win rates were higher in this event than in the prior one. Kyurem Palkia dropping a little bit in win rate. You know, anything can really explain that. Less of the top players playing this because they're trying the Lost Zone box, or maybe more people are getting used to playing against Kyurem Palkia now. Palkia Inteleon, though, with a super good win rate, 40 people playing at 56% win rate. Hisuian Zoroark still pretty high in the percentage, almost 6 to 7% of people playing it. I don't think Hisuian Zoroark is very good. I think I've made that kind of known. But yeah, let's go down here and look at the Hisuian Zoroark list since we didn't have one to look at in the last event. So this got top 16, playing a Charon, playing Avery as well for some help against Palkia, which I think is much needed because I think Zoroark V-Star's Palkia matchup is abysmal. Deancey as well to stop the turn 1 bosses. But really, like, if your deck is weak to Palkia and Inteleon, and I also don't think it's amazing versus Palkia Kyurem, I don't see why you'd play it, because those are pretty important decks to beat. So let's see. They did beat 2 Palkia Inteleons, and they also beat Kyurem Palkia. So maybe I don't know what I'm talking about, but in my testing, Palkia Inteleon versus Hisuian Zoroark V-Star has been very Palkia favored. Maybe there's something in this list specifically that makes the matchup better. They are playing Manaphy, but Palkia lists, a lot of them are still playing Canceling Cologne. So like you can cross switcher the Manaphy, Canceling Cologne, and then like pop 2 things that had Gape Jaw Bog damage on them. And then Hisuian Zoroark V-Stars are really easy for Palkia to knock out compared to a lot of other things in the format. But that's just the Palkia matchup, and maybe that person knows something I don't about that matchup, and they were able to beat it. We have some Mew VMAX lists here. We have a Shadow Rider that we will take a quick look at here. Shadow Rider in the top 16. Espeon VMAX, of course, has the ability that says prevent all effects of attacks done to your Pokemon with energy on them. So Espeon VMAX's ability prevents Giratina's Lost Requiem from just one-shot knockout things with the effect of knocking out. So Solar Revelation blocks that. And then there's not a lot of dark attackers going on right now because people are just playing Drapion V to take care of Mew. And this deck doesn't give a heck about Drapion V. So cool deck. Do I think it's great? No. Do I think it's functioning and can win games? Yeah. So I don't think it's amazing, but it's fine. Let me know what you think about that one in the comments down below. Here we have an Arceus Giratina as well. No flying Pikachu, just full focusing on Let's Marnie Path, Arceus Bibarel Giratina. I think I said on my when I was a guest on the Shuffle podcast, I was like, because LDF asked me if Arceus Giratina would be good, and I said Arceus Bibarel Marnie Path is good. It takes a lot to ruin that deck, so sure, Arceus Giratina will be good. It's like fine, it's not insane. Here we have a Giratina deck, no Thornton, and also very low on the tech attackers, but it is playing Snorlax, and Snorlax is really good. It just swings 180 for no gosh darn reason, so it can't be bad. Snorlax is one of those cards where it's like just 180 on a single prizer. You're gonna get value out of that over the course of a few matches. Then we have the Mew Decks. Let's see what the 8th place Mew was looking like here. Pokestop Mew, Silene, Avery, two bosses, have a lost vacuum and 2 lost cities, so that's something to keep in mind, but only 1 Pokestop, very surprisingly. Let's see, lost to an Arceus Inteleon, lost to a Palkia Inteleon, and then lost to Yokohama Box in top 8 cut. Now the Mew I wanted to look at is Hunter's. Um, Hunter had the bright idea of putting a Drapion V in his own Mew deck, and also a Thornton. I think this deck is so good. This list is so good for Mew. Um, Hunter hit 2 Mew mirrors, and he beat both of them, of course, because he's playing Drapion V Thornton. It's free. The Mew mirror becomes free when you're playing that. He also felt that the water matchups were really good for him. He hit 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 Palkia Inteleons, and he beat 5 out of 6 of them. And he hit 1, 2, 3 Curems, and he beat all 3 of them. As far as Lost Zone boxes, let's see if Vaughn was playing Yokohama or Singapore. Okay, so Vaughn was playing the Yokohama box with Radiant Zard. Hunter did beat that. He lost to Cal playing Yokohama, and he lost to this one playing Singapore version with the Drapion and everything. So I think this Mew deck's really good. It's gonna be quite funny if every Mew deck ends up having their own Drapion plus Thornton, because then it's like, who lost cities the other person's Drapion first? Quite interesting. Quite interesting world for Mew right now. We have a lot of Lost Zone boxes here in top 8, 4 to be exact. Ho-OS was playing the Singapore version with Crabominable, Zeraora, Drapion V, Jacob Howard playing the same version. The baby Zeraora, does he have it? No, he has Raikou V instead, Jacob Howard, but let's confirm that Ho-OS had those Zeraora, and I'm not crazy. I'm crazy. He has the Raikou V as well. So the reason why I like Zeraora better is because it's a single prizer that you can Luminion Raihan for under Empoleon lock and knock out that Empoleon with the single prizer. But perhaps Raikou's better because it doesn't get return knocked out by the second Empoleon. So maybe Raikou V is better than Zeraora, and you can also knock out Palkia without a belt. So Jacob Howard playing that same list at 11-3-2. Let's see what the matchups looked like. A loss to Cure and Palkia, and then just beat everything else. But okay, so against Cure and Palkia went 3-1. Against Palkia and Teleon went 1-0. Against Giratina Decks went 2-0-1. And other Lost Zone boxes around 50-50 or so. So not bad at all. This deck list has a lot of merit to it, it would seem. Definitely harder to play than the other version, though. And then we have Ben T getting second with Palkia, playing Double Net, the Rare Candy, Big Charm. Those are all cards I like. I don't think I'm on the same train of thought here with Triple Stadium. I'm not really down with that. But maybe this is kind of like a testing grounds, like let's play all 3 and then afterwards see which one was the worst, and that's the one they cut going forward. So it could have just been a testing kind of thing. Roxanne good, Raihan good in a single prize meta, get some extra attacks out with Inteleon, or get an extra energy accelerated to Radiant Greninja. And then Cal and Hale both playing the Yokohama box with Radiant Zard, no Mirage Gates. This one's very, very consistent and reliable. Also a little easier to play at a reasonable rate, but still plenty of growth with the skill ceiling. I do think this one's more counterable, though, which makes sense. It's easier to play. It's a little bit more linear. It's going to be a little bit easier to counter. Cal only lost to one thing, and it was Arceus Inteleon, hashtag AI propaganda. And he beat everything else. So let's see. He went 4-0-1 against mirror matches. 1-0 versus Kieran Palkia. 1-0 versus Arc Flying Peak. 4-0 versus Mew. 1-0 versus Urshi. 1-0 versus Zoroark. Tied Palkia. And also tied in Arceus Inteleon here. And then beat the Palkia in the finals. So this one, just looking at the metagame one more time, Lost Zone Box was the most popular. It had a pretty good win rate for being the most popular deck. And then it was half of the top 8, 2 of them being Singapore-ish builds and 2 of them being Yokohama builds. Let's go on to the very last one here that we'll look at, with Giratina winning and Lucas Oldale, Kieran Palkia. Funny enough that 2 seniors got first and second here. So let's look at James's Giratina list. Thank the Lord the clouds part, and James played a Thornton. This no more looking at Tina lists without Thornton in today's video. We're gonna stop on this one, where this is the last one we're looking at because it has Thornton in it. 1 Sableye, 2 Crams, and a Radiant Greninja as the alternative attackers to Giratina. Also the Drapion for the Mew matchup. Now, it does look pretty spread thin on attackers with just 2 Cram, 1 Sableye, 1 Ninja, and then your double, your 2-2 Giratina line. But remember, those Thorntons can be used for Sableye or Cramorant or Greninja or Drapion if needed, as long as they don't get lost city'd. For Mirage Gate to consistently be able to accelerate that energy when you want to. And let's look at what James's matchups were. So taking a loss to Yokohama Box. Okay, and then taking a loss to Arceus Flying Pikachu Giratina. And then beating everything else. So it went 1-1 versus Arc Pika. It went 2-1 versus Lost Zone Box variant. It went 1-0 versus Palkia Bibarel. It went 3-0 versus Kieran Palkia. 1-0 versus Zoroark. 1-0 versus Mew. 1-0 versus Regigigas. So it hit a pretty nice spread of things. I would have liked to see it have to play against some more, some Palkia and Teleons and see how it does in that matchup. But we can always check the overall fields matchup against Palkia and Teleon. And then we have Lucas Oldale here at second with Kieran Palkia with 2 Empoleon this time. 2 Empoleon, great against the Lost Boxes. Not as good against the variants with Tina in it, because you just retreat to Tina, put some things in the Lost Zone, and then if they don't kill the Tina there, then you can get rolling, even though Empoleon's out. So let's see what Kieran Palkia, piloted by Lucas Oldale, lost to. Lost to a Lost Box, lost to Arceus Duraludon, and lost in the finals, of course, to the Giratina. Let's take a look at Frank's Duraludon list. Frank Mintmeyer got top 8 at Milwaukee with Arceus Duraludon, I want to say. He was the one that didn't have Eldegoss V in his list. So, congrats to him for not putting out Eldegoss V in his list. Shouts out there. Lost to an Arceus Inteleon. Bad matchup that's still sticking around and being a thorn in Arceus Duraludon's side. Beat a Hisuian Goodra V-Star in top 16, which we should probably take a look at. Okay, so lost Goodra with 1 Fantina, no Hyper Pots. Just kind of see how people are building their Goodra lists. Yeah, Arceus Duraludon I think is pretty mid right now, but Frank plays the deck a lot, so I don't think this is a testament to Arceus Duraludon. I think it's a testament to Frank really liking Arceus Duraludon and making it work. So those are all of the things that we'll look at in today's video, but you can find all of these tournaments on play.limitlesstcg.com if you want to look a little bit more for yourself. Thank you guys so much for watching. Have a great day, and I'll see you next time here on Celio's Network.